Ovulation is the expulsion of cumulus oocyte complex. In this video, I am going to tell you how ovulation occurs and when it occurs. Hey everyone, welcome back to HM Learnings. I am Harshita, the creator of HM Learnings, where students come to clear their concept and to get the study material. Make sure you subscribe our channel. So today we are back with the next video of the reproductive physiology, that is upon the ovulation. So in the previous video we have talked in detail about the endometrial cycle and about the ovarian cycle, but one thing which we have not talked in detail is about the ovulation. So we already know what is ovulation. It's basically the expulsion of oocyte from the ovary, you can say, and more appropriately you can say it's the expulsion of the cumulus oocyte complex from the ovary. So if you see in this diagram is actually showing you the different follicular stage of the ovary and the different follicular stages of the follicle inside the ovary. So here you see that we are having the pre-antral follicle, then the antral follicle, and the dominant follicle, and then there is a rupture of that follicle. So we have to focus on this stage. So you can see it's a kind of an expulsion, not only the oocyte but the cumulus also along with the oocyte from the ovary into the peritoneal cavity. So it's a kind of a rupture of the follicle as well as it's a rupture of the ovarian wall. It's not like exocytosis, it is actually a rupture in the wall. So we are going to see that how exactly this rupture happens, and then like before that we have to understand when does ovulation happen. So in a cycle of duration of 28 days cycle, ovulation usually happens on the 14th day. Usually it happens on the 14th day. It could be happening from 12 to 16 day, and we know that basically if we see in the case of the ovarian cycle, ovulation is actually telling us that there is a shift in the hormonal function of the ovary from from predominantly secreting estrogen hormone to the predominantly secreting the progesterone hormone in the luteal phase. So it's a kind of a transition of a follicular from a follicular phase to the luteal phase. And then in the endometrial cycle, because as the hormones which are which are secreted by the follicle are also changed, the endometrium is also changing. So there is a shift from the proliferative phase to the secretory phase of the endometrium. So now, as we said that in a cycle of 28 days, it happens on the 14th day, but the cycle duration could be ranging from 21 days to 35 days. So in that case, how do you know when does the ovulation is happening? So in general, we say that the luteal phase duration remains constant. It is a duration of 14 days. So from a beginning of the next menstrual cycle, if you minus retrospectively 14 days, so you can get the ovulation day of the previous menstrual cycle, irrespective of the length of the menstrual cycles. And that is how we know that when does the ovulation is happen. So in this slide we have seen what is ovulation and when it occurs, and it's a kind of a demarcation between the follicular phase and the luteal phase and the proliferative phase and the secretory phase. So in the next slide we are going to see that how it occurs, what is the mechanism of it. So we because it's a kind of a hormonal interplay, everything is depending upon the hormones and their interaction with each other. We see that there are in this diagram we will see that there is estrogen and the progesterone drawn in the above cycle, in the above diagram, and the FSH and the LH in the lower one, and the x-axis is showing the days of the female sexual cycle. So if we are saying that there is a 28 day cycle, so the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle is lasting from 0 day to the 14th day, and in the first half will be till what, around till 7th day the first half is there. Then from here it will be the second half of the proliferative phase, which is the last 7 days of the proliferative phase. So in the second half of the proliferative phase, you can see there is a steep rise in the levels of the estrogen hormone. So these steep rise ultimately leads to the achievement of the maximum or the peak level of the estrogen hormone around 10th day of the cycle and remained at the maximum level for about 2 days. Now normally what happens, the estrogen is exerting a negative feedback action on LH and FSH. But now it remained at the maximum for certain period for about 2 days. It is start exerting a positive feedback effect on LH, on the gonadotropes, on the energy pituitary, leading to the increased secretion in the level of LH and the FSH, which is called as a positive feedback action. So now from the 12th day, you can see there is a rise in the level of the LH hormone, which is around 6 to 10 folds, and FSH also, which is around 2 to 3 folds. So there is much higher rise in the LH hormone and this LH surge. So you can see on 10th day, the estrogen is on peak level. Now on 12th day, what happens? There is LH surge onset, and on 14th day, the ovulation is going to happen. So your LH surge reach its peak level. So at this point, it reaches a peak level, which is around 9 to 16 hours before the ovulation. So somehow you can understand that it's the LH surge which is responsible for the phenomena called as the ovulation. So what does LH surge does? So LH surge is actually going to do two things. One is that it's going to do the ovulation, which we already know. Second thing is that it is actually causing the formation of corpus luteum. It is actually causing the luteinization of the neural cells and the theca cells, and this is starting happening even before the ovulation. So the progesterone levels are start to rise even before the ovulation, because the LH has already reached its peak level before the ovulation, so it is having its action. So this progesterone is also responsible for causing the ovulation. So how? That is we are going to see in the next slide. So these are the same points which I have told you. You can pause the video and read them. So how does LH surge induce ovulation? So it is going to cause a stigma formation on the ovarian wall. Okay, so it's not the LH surge which is causing the stigma formation. I'm telling you what is stigma. First thing, this is a smooth ovarian wall. Then what happens? There is a stigma, is basically kind of a protrusion on the ovarian wall. So this is stigma. Now this stigma is caused by what? There is a dominant follicle which is carrying a oocyte. So this follicle is actually pressing against the ovarian wall and forming the stigma. So this stigma is being formed by the dominant follicle pressing against the ovarian surface. Then what happens, like if you see in the previous slide, we have seen a diagram in which I have told you that it's not the exocytosis, it's a kind of a rupture of the ovarian wall as well as rupture of the follicle. So it's a kind of a breakage of the wall. So how does that happen? Because the LH surge is going to cause a release of the cytokines as well as the hydrolytic enzymes from the theca and the granulosa cells, which will cause the degradation or degeneration of the follicular wall. So ultimately you can see it's a gap which is being created. So this is the ovarian wall, and this ovarian wall is being digested, and as well as the follicular wall which is made by the theca and the granulosa cells, that is also going to be digested. So next is that there is swallowing of the follicle. So these are the steps which are being done by the LH surge, but they are not happening in a stepwise manner. They are actually happening simultaneously. So swallowing of the follicle, how does that happen? So there is degeneration of the follicular wall. So the fluid enters inside the follicle. That is the swallowing of the follicle. Next thing which is happening is that the blood vessels, they start invading the granulosa cells. And also there is a local secretion of the prostaglandins. They are going to cause a vasodilation. So ultimately there is increase in the plasma transduction into the follicle and hence swelling of the follicle. So you understand that the oocyte is inside the follicle and the oocyte has to come outside the follicle. So inside the follicle there is increase in the pressure by the fluid which has entered inside the follicle, and this is actually pushing the oocyte outside the follicle as well as outside the ovary, and this is facilitated by the simultaneous dissolution of the ovarian wall and the follicular wall, and this is all being done by the LH surge. So ultimately there is swallowing of follicle will cause a rupture of follicle and degeneration of the stigma, and hence the ovum will come outside the ovary in the peritoneal cavity. So Now, where is the role of the progesterone? Progesterone is here. So, this luteinizing hormone is causing the release of the progesterone hormone, which is causing these action. It is going to weaken the follicular wall. It is going to cause a follicular swelling also, ultimately follicular rupture and evagination of the ovum. So, we now know that what is ovulation, when it occurs, and how it occurs. So, these are the references you can look up to for further understanding. In the next video, we are going to talk about the indicators of the ovulation or the tests of the ovulation. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Till then, keep learning.